Hi, I'm Philip. I'm one of the two founders of LeFi. I have a technical background, but I'm the CEO. And yeah, today I'll tell you a little bit more about infrastructure fragmentation, liquidity fragmentation, the whole bridging landscape, and why we do what we do in terms of aggregating all these different solutions. And yeah, let's start right in. What we are seeing here is last month liquidity flows across multiple chains. We see the in and out flows from and to different chains. And so we can clearly tell there is a demand for cross-chain swapping, cross-chain bridging. Yeah, we have seen that these bridges, this whole bridging landscape has been evolving pretty quickly. It's been growing fast. There are billions locked on bridges these days. And all of that space this space doesn't even stop growing. We have around 70 bridging solutions out there, and all the established ones are reinventing themselves over and over again. To make an example, Connex has reinvented itself 3 times over the past 1.5 years, and in a tremendous way, like in a really good way. So we're making progress. These teams are learning, we want to make sure that you as a wallet provider, for example, that you don't have to care about that. Because it's not only a huge implementation overhead, it's also a maintenance overhead that comes alongside these things. So you want to make sure that you can build your product, focus on distribution, because like you're a B2C product, right? So you want to make sure you can focus on your own things. All that network, all the networking stuff, we call it network abstraction, is taken care of. We make the decisions, we make the research, and yeah, that's what we are doing. So essentially, altogether, we are a multi-chain middleware, essentially aggregating all these different bridges. And as bridges are mainly limited to stablecoins and native currencies, and as your own users are coming in and out of long-tail assets, we connect these bridges to the DEXs and DEX aggregators on both sides. So you can swap, bridge, and swap within one transaction. There's an example, sorry. This is an example. Here we are trying to swap Cake on BSC to Magic on Arbitrum. So we're coming out of long-tail asset and we're going to end up in one. And here we can see what's happening on our smart contract. It's a little small right now, I'm sorry. But we are swapping Cake on BSC into BUSD in that case. And we are using Stargate to move it over to Arbitrum, ending up in USDC. And then again, we call oneinch to end up in Magic. All of that is happening in 3 minutes and within one transaction. And most of the times we can guarantee these things, so you have the best user experience. And by doing these things within one transaction, it's also the most gas efficient way to do these things, right? And normally you would have to figure it out and sign multiple transactions, but this is the best user experience. You can try this out yourself on jumper.exchange, which is our B2C interface, which we launched today. So if you want to just figure out how the tech works in a visual way, that's the way to go. We have been very early in this space, so there were just connects and hop around. Cbridge was not even around, and multi-chain was just launching back then, called AnySwap. So we've started doing that very early. We were very loud. We did a lot of research around bridges, and maybe some of you have read our pieces on arbitrary data messaging comparison, for example. But I'll get to that. In the end, we have been working closely with MetaMask to identify which bridges are safe and what's not, and we will talk a lot about safety today. Yeah, this is the result of that. So around 90% of MetaMask bridging volume is going through us, and that's simply because we are the most focused aggregation protocol on this market. So we are around 40 people by now, just focusing on reliability, security, speed, and cost, and getting this up and running and scalable, making it as scalable as possible. So how does it work, right? 70 bridging projects, fuck, that's a lot. It is a lot, and there is so much to look into. So figuring out who are the teams, is the team doxed? How experienced is the team? Is it a team of 16 years old, or is it a team that has shipped in the past, has more experience, who has invested in these teams, right? And we have done a lot of work, not only alone, also working with L2Beat and Consensus. So I was so free to put in some links here to give you the chance to do your own research. The first is a cross-chain risk framework, which we developed over the past 7 months together with Consensus. Peter Robinson, a very, very famous name in the research space. Yeah, we have been working closely with them. It was a lot of work. It's very technical, though. If you just want to have a comparison around arbitrary data messaging, this is not too relevant for wallets. We do have some wallets that do want to do more advanced stuff, like swap, bridge, swap, and stake. So cross-chain contract calls, apart from the liquidity bridging. For those people, take a look into that. bit.ly, AMB framework. It's 40 pages, so you need some time, but you'll get to it. If you're interested in particular bridges, certain specific solutions you have heard of, we are writing deep dives about all of these different solutions. So you find them on our blog, and of course you can ping us. We have full-time researchers on this. Happy to answer any question. Doesn't matter if you want to integrate us or not. Like, we don't care. Just come to us. Happy to guide you on all these questions. And yeah. Apart from these assessment of the bridges, as I mentioned, there are different frameworks we can talk about. One to mention is the sorry, it's a little bit delayed. The interoperability trilemma. So essentially, one thing we need to understand when we talk about bridges is that all of these bridges are doing or taking trade-offs. And this trilemma here essentially is one that was established by Connext, one of the very early bridging developers. And they've done a great job in that interoperability trilemma by saying, all right, we always have to pick 2 out of 3 factors to focus on. The one is trustlessness. So essentially we are asking who is verifying the system and what would it cost to corrupt it. The next question is generalizability. So what can you do with it? So an arbitrary data messaging bridge like Axelar and Layer 0, you can do all kinds of stuff on top of that. But the problem is, if you can do a lot on it, the verification of just arbitrary data passing is very expensive and slow. So it doesn't really scale for the all-days use cases, and often your users just want to swap and move liquidity, right? So this is why all these AMBs have their own liquidity networks on top. Axelar has Satellite and Squid, Layer 0 has Stargate, Nomad back then was about to partner with Connext, Wormholes is called Portal, this is the thing. But there is more, there are also zero-knowledge bridges and different kinds of other things, but we'll get to that. The third question is extensibility, which means how easy is it for a system to go from one chain to the next, and maybe even go from EVM to non-EVM. So to make an example, the most trust minimized, like trustless bridges, are light client-based bridges, like Near's Rainbow Bridge, for example. So we are installing a light client of the other chain on each other. That obviously doesn't scale at all, right? Extensibility really low, trust minimization really high, generalizability also really high. So we took 2 of these factors, focus on that, but then, yeah, we have to take a trade-off on extensibility. We could dive deeper into this. There's a lot more to tell, but I don't want to overdo it here. Some liquidity networks, Connext, Liquidity, Hop. We have systems like multi-chain, Seabridge, Avalanche that are quite trusted these days. So it's very centralized, and we have seen what happens to centralized bridges. So we'll see how long they will stick around. The Avalanche native bridge, Seabridge, and multi-chain. But all in all, you have to also understand that it's a very competitive market, and sometimes it makes sense to take certain trade-offs, be first to the market, get a lot of traction and volume, build your brand, and then you have the right philosophic angle down the line, and you optimize and work into that direction. Some people did it the other way around. Seabridge started much more like Connext and Hop, for example, was very trust minimized, and then they saw multi-chains growing. Like back then, AnySwap's growth was incredibly fast, so they were like, okay, fuck that. Let's let's do it centralized. Let's grow faster. And then, now we see the opposite trend. Doesn't matter if Synapse or whatsoever, all of them are aiming for a greater decentralization down the line. And then, we see these big players like Wormhole, Layer 0, and Axelar that are really, very generalizable. They can do a lot. So it's interesting. It's an interesting space, and if we take a look into this whole space, this is just a glimpse of what is available. So you have seen plenty of these names, I'm guessing. On top of those names mentioned on the right side, on the left side, we still have native bridges on top of that. like the native Polygon POS, native Optimism Gateway. We still have stablecoin bridges, so DAI is building their own bridge called Maker's Teleporter. USD Circle is releasing their own USDC bridge, which is going to be centralized out of from a regulatory perspective. Makes sense. But yeah, on top of that, we're going to see NFT bridges. There are first few projects, but they still have to solve for multiple things around this. We're going to see application-specific bridges as we see application-specific chains. Sharding is coming, post-dank sharding. We're going to see an inter-shard communication protocol. We have IBC, we have XCMP within Polkadot. Also within the IBC space, there's a lot happening. So Polymer, for example, is a bridge that does zero-knowledge IBC, right? So even in that niche, there's a lot happening. So it's overwhelming, and even us spending full time on this with 40 people, even we are overwhelmed with the amount of research and the amount of effort we have to put into to understand everything, to stay on track and follow in our integration. This is bursting. So we try to take off that load from you. Yeah, data availability layers also be interesting. We see zero knowledge proof bridges that allow us to take to get a proof cross-chain, just that, so it's much cheaper than messaging, and it's something different than liquidity bridging. Two protocols to mention here are Herodotus and Lagrange. So I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm on Arbitrum, I want to prove I have that lens profile on Polygon, so I can get a cross-chain zero-knowledge proof and just be like, yeah, that's me, by the way. I can get that proof cross-chain very easily, very cheap. This is coming as well. They're going to take off a huge part of that AMB messaging away. And also a very interesting trend. So you remember that I mentioned that DAI and Circle are releasing their own bridges, right? So what does it mean? Most liquidity networks are right now focusing on stablecoins and native currencies, which mean out of capital efficiency reasons, right? They can't expose themselves to the volatility of all these long tail assets. Now, as these stablecoin bridges are coming in, that essentially means that half of the use case is eradicated. So what are they going to do? They go down. They go into that overcrowded, overfunded space of arbitrary data messaging, so message passing. So Connext, Hop V2, all of them, there's Sila IAM, multi-chains AnyCall, so all of them are having features now that allow you to send messages across chains and do things like fancy cross-chain money market stuff, right? So that again makes the space much more competitive. And then when I said overfunded, just think about that Axela has raised $200 million, Layer 0, $300 million. These guys have war chests for the next 10 years if they want to, or simply pour in 10 million into a marketing campaign. Doesn't matter, right? So, so very interesting space. Yeah. Wait, this is a little delayed. In general, to give you an understanding how we work, we spend a lot of time with our clients. We're more enterprise focused in that sense. Also, Max and my background is B2B software as a service, so we've done that in the past. Essentially, we want to be your best partner. We want to educate you in the first place and make sure that you make the right decision in the end. So come talk to us. Essentially, we're going to explain you the bridging landscape, the bridging risk. Also, depending on the use case, some of your wallets are probably more going into the custodial direction and maybe even onboarding institutions. Some of you are more into cross-chain staking and more experimental stuff. So whatever you're up to, we can consult you on which bridges in the end to allow or deny, like white and blacklisting. We support that to make sure that you have fast API response times. Because if you would talk to all the bridges at the same time, you can imagine the response time is like the API response time is just fairly slow. We don't want that. And there's no way, we are bound to the third parties we implement, right? So we can't speed that up. So we guide you on which bridges to enable, what not. MetaMask did a great job there. They just started with 3 bridges and a few amount of networks, and now they're slowly ramping it up and adding more and more bridges as we optimize it for them. We can also consult you on the general rollout and user support systems, because obviously once you implement bridging, you have a new customer support case, right? What happens if a transaction gets stuck? To be fair, by now this happens rarely. Bridges are much more mature by now than they were a year ago, but sometimes it does happen. And for that, we have different support systems in place where you can simply, where we can help you out. We have a Discord bot, for example, you can invite that automatically processes bridging transactions, helps you to resolve cases really quickly, and things like that. And of course, in the end, I would say we are quite good at marketing, so we can help you with your marketing campaign and get it out and make sure that we get you some noise around a launch. this is so. Quickly talking about security also on our end. In general, just in the last 9 months, we have done 3 independent audits, Code Arena, QuantStamp, Spearbit. So we try to do this on a quarterly basis. Again, also this year we now have quarterly audits. So we frequently audit and re-audit the stuff that we are doing. We have security research on our cap table, actually multiple ones from Mudit Gupta down to security firms like QuantStamp, so we can ask questions anytime. We do that specifically when we deploy gas optimizations, so often no logic has changed, but just we optimize certain things for gas, and then we get a quick check-in with them. All our core data is verifiable. We aggressively monitor everything we do historically as well as in real time with different solutions from Tenderly to guardrail, and continuously exploring other risk mitigation techniques. Yeah, so far we haven't been immutable. We did that, well, we were halfway immutable. Essentially we said, all right, we want to have an extendable diamond contract so that we can add new facets as new bridges come up. It has always been audited though, so in 2-3 weeks from now, we're going to have 2 versions. You can have either the immutable contract, like 100% immutability, and stick with that, or you have the option to go with the nightly bills version, which are also audited, and gives you access to new chains. Often we have experienced customers don't really want that. We have the enterprise customers, they want to have the full immutability. At the same time, we have non-enterprise customers, and they're like, when do you implement Synapse? When do you implement Squid? When can we go to Cosmos? When can we go to Solana, right? So they want to have that stuff fast. It's more FOMO driven. In the end, we believe it's super safe to use both. On our end, we make sure that upgradability can only happen via Gnosis safe and with hardware wallets involved and all of that. So it's really hard to update our contract in the end. In general, this is the product suite, real quick. The protocol underlying, on top of that, we have a smart routing API, which obviously is centralized. And yes, we would love to decentralize it, but it's not feasible in the next 5 years because there's so much data aggregation happening. I don't think that you're going to do that. And yeah, on top of this, we have an SDK, makes it easy to implement the new SDK, makes it easy to implement us in any kind of back-end or front-end TypeScript. We have a widget. Not relevant for the wallets here, but if you have a website, it might help you to just try out the tech and see is there demand for this. And yeah, if you want to try it out just yourself, try out Jumper.exchange. And yeah, that's all about it. Thanks. Any questions? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Parth. First of all, I just want to give you a big shout out for all the excellent content you put out. I love Blog Li-Fi. I feel like the content you, Mark, and Arjun put out, it's really amazing. You get the best technical deep dives on bridges. So thanks for doing that. My question is, what made you develop or have this vertical integration of developing a cross-chain exchange? What's the motivation for Jumper?
Motivation for Jumper is essentially twofold. So one is you need kind of a showcase to make a developer understand what you're offering, right? We always had Transfer to XYZ. We always had that B2C interface, but we just never focused on it. We never took care of it. And in the end, you know, it was a result out of a hackathon. So we just needed to revamp this. And we were not happy with the name, so we gave it another brand. That was the core motivation. We also saw that competitors made a lot of volume with their B2C interface, and obviously this gives a greater mind share. So there's also that BD angle of getting the volumes up and running. But our focus will be B2B, and yeah, but we needed to somehow separate it from Li-Fi, which is like a very B2B serious account, and now we have a shitpost account where we can do fun stuff. It's B2C, and all of the funny stuff that piles up inside you can now be relieved on that B2C interface. Yeah.
Does it work? Cool. So there was a lot of drama going on between Layer 0 and Wormhole pretty recently. And so I was reading the different approaches that they're taking to security. And I remember you saying in the beginning of this that you're pretty technical. So I'm wondering if you lean more towards one solution or the other, if you have any comments on that.
I can't make too many hard comments. let's say people have a different amount of experience in managing their API in terms of forward and backwards compatibility, and I would say that all these solutions are very early. Like more important is the bottom line. We are talking about projects that are how old? Like half a year, something like that. We haven't seen any bigger cases on these bridges, except of the liquidity networks they have built themselves. So Uniswap as being one of the most important and mission critical protocols for this whole space, for us it's just a very wrong move to do that step right now with any of these solutions. There is no bridge I would recommend to do this with right now. On the other side, we can also argue, well, move fast and break things. I just don't think Uniswap should be the guy doing that. Well, at the same time, we could argue Layer 0 and Wormhole as well as Axelar. So Axelar was not even considered. That is also like not cool. At the same time, I would say they have all enough money to throw a whole security team on top of that, buy in the best DevOps guys. But still, you know, you can hire the best team. These technical systems grow and mature over time because you can't foresee edge cases. That's just how it is, right? Like doesn't matter how experienced you are, you can't foresee edge cases. And hopefully not a strong edge case that comes up for Uniswap. Yeah.